Hello everyone, I am back. So, there are a few questions in chat, so I feel like I should answer them from the illustrious hi-rez PonPon that got banned. Yeah, get a wrist pad. If you can't really see very well, you can see like on my wrist it's a little bit red there. There's the inverted kappa. That's good. Yeah, I rub my mouse against my desk, as you can see by the desk shaking whenever I play, and so bad habit. It's not that big of a deal. But then we also got, what other gods I've been considering doing a follow-up tutorial for? So I do plan on doing, I think the idea is going to be I'm going to do like 3 times or 4 times a week. One of them is going to be some form of general strategy, like really analyzing when you should be going for Fire Giant. Gold Fury would be a good example. Another good example would be like, how do I pick gods that synergize well together? Would be another kind of thing that I could do a topic on. Then I think I would do something like this, where I'm doing 2 god guides. So I didn't actually, I thought I would go on Thanatos for like 20 to 30 minutes. I ended up going on Thanatos for like 40 minutes. So I definitely might only do 1 if I know the god really well. If it's 2 gods I don't know fully well, but I can at least explain them and guide people in the right direction, I might do 2. So we'll see how that goes. And then I also want to do one of like actual competitive matches where I sit there and instead of casting a competitive match, I will analyze a competitive match and be like, here's what they're doing at this time. Was this good? Was this bad? And this is going to be more so that people can understand SPL a little bit better as they're watching it. And for teams that are trying to be up and coming, like in the Challengers Cup, they might be able to gain some insight of it. Amateur teams might be able to gain some insight of it. And I think that could be very interesting. So was that Crunch on the other side of Mez? And so I have Crunch here, and then Mez is in the background twirling his feet. I don't know why he's twirling his feet, but he is. But yeah, they're here because they decided to come up to Georgia and visit us. Crunchshot is literally Twitch chat. But yeah, so it's actually really fun having them here. We have another question, which was, what do you think of Heavy Hammer first item on Thanatos, just like Weekend did in Cognitive Prime? I was actually really happy. Oh god, Mez. Go away. Go away.
I don't want to though.
Go away. Go away. Go away.
Fine.
Go away.
This is professional podcast. We don't need you here.
So I first actually started using Heavy Hammer in terms of like just playing on the characters in Siege, and I was talking to DM a little bit, and I was like, you know, it would be really good because like Thanatos is the one jungler that doesn't need Bumbas, and like instead of going Death Toll, why not just go Heavy Hammer? Who's ever gonna be able to duel me? And I like it. I think it's strong. The only reason I don't do it is because I found that if things start to go poorly, if I can't get the kills that I really need to get, I need some way to at least farm and stay in levels so that when the opportunity does come for me to get kills and start snowballing, I'm not behind in levels. And so if I get Heavy Hammer at the start, that means I have to get hand 1, which is a 90-second cooldown, versus Death Toll with hand 2. And so I've been debating back and forth. I think it could really go either way, and especially in terms of if you're playing Thanatos with the high, kind of I'm just gonna play the really high risk reward as Weekend did. That whole, like, if you actually go look at that match, that team fight was that game was literally won in like 20 minutes. If that's your goal, Heavy Hammer all the way. Just know that could potentially backfire on you. I think it's good though. I even mentioned it as a possible build, and I'm really glad that Weekend built it properly. There was a few people in the SPL who built Heavy Hammer, but they built it for the wrong reasons. They built it as like a 3rd item, and the reason you wouldn't want to do that, sure, it's really good, but health is most effective early on. In terms of what is the best stat you could possibly get early, it is health, always. This is why Death Toll was so good for so long. This is why mages still start with the extra health they get from the Vampiric Shroud. This is why the health is just the best stat early. If you can get it, you want to get it because you'll become way harder to kill more than any protection could give you. And so when you build a 3rd item, though, you're dropping 1100 on an item that isn't gonna really do the same justification it could for the first 5 levels. So I definitely think if you're gonna build it, it either has to be 2nd item or 1st item, and on 2nd item it has to pretty much be only Osiris, because Osiris is really the only one that can really justify having it 2nd. Maybe Fenrir as well. My eyes look very tired. My eyes just always look very tired. I have very baggy eyes. I'm actually not very tired. I did take a nap earlier today though. But yeah, so that's the whole idea of Heavy Hammer. or not heavy hammer, frostbite hammer on Thanatos. It's good, risky, and you have to really understand why you're getting it if you're going to get it. You've been struggling a lot knowing when to do fights and when to fall back. Would there be a way to do a tutorial on that? Yes, there could definitely be one of that. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a straw poll or some form of poll over the course of like on Twitter, or when I stream, I'm going to post it here. See what people want, put a whole bunch of topics on there, and we'll kind of go in order of what people want. Knowing when to go into fights and when to fall back would be a really, really good one, because I think a lot of people have issues with that, but I would definitely look into doing that. Definitely, I would need like a full hour to explain all the intricacies of that. Would you take advice from people you know on gods you plan to do? Yes! So, for example, if I'm doing Geb, I feel pretty confident in understanding at least how Geb's supposed to be played. But if Ionic comes in here, or not even Ionic, if anyone comes in here and says, what about this? I'm not going to just dismiss it. I'm gonna think about it and be like, oh yeah, this could work. You could literally be level 5 and come up with an idea, and I'm not going to just dismiss you because you're level 5 or anything. It's going to be based off the argument you make and what you think about the character. So, I definitely also want to see if I can maybe reach out to some pro players and bring them on. If they're really well known for a god, it'd be kind of cool to kind of go over the god and then bring them on and see their perspective and stuff like that. And I think for now, that's really all the questions before I move into Geb. So Geb, we're going to move into Geb, and we're kind of going to go... Yeah, I know the audio is desynced. I'm not sure exactly why, but there's not much I can do with it without turning off the stream and without even knowing what the problem is. So you guys are going to have to bear with me. When I go into game, or when I go into the actual client, it shouldn't be too bad. It's probably just because it decided that it didn't want to sync up properly. I am using the new OBS version. But let's go into game, where I'm going to go over Geb a little bit quicker, because in terms of my knowledge on Geb, I know the skill order, I know what you should build, I know all the basics of it. And so I'm going to convey that, but I can't go into the as detailed strategy of like showing you a replay of what I did, like I did on Thanatos. But I will guide you to pro players, specific games. I'll link to like specific games of the SPL where you can really kind of see it, see Geb in full force. So let's first get into Geb. First off, his passive. We're going to go into the character builder real quick. We're going to look at his abilities. So his first one is Hard as a Rock. So crits only do 25% damage to Geb rather than the normal 100%. This means, and Guardians have a really, really big problem, which is the reason you pick a Hunter in the first place is they are the only ones that actually get enough damage after they get to the late game that they can actually kill tanks effectively. Mages have a really hard time killing tanks. Warriors have a really hard time killing tanks. The only real characters on your team that can kill tanks in a reasonable amount of time is Hunters. And this passive makes it, and the reason they scale so hard is because of crit. And so this makes Geb a really, really, really hard Guardian to shut down. This means it's harder to pick him off as the Hunter, so that, like, a lot of teams will go on Fire Giant after they pick off the support because no one else on the team will have hand 3. And with hand 3, it's pretty much free. He's really hard to kill, not only because of his other skills, but just because of this alone late game. This is really, really good. Rollout. So this is also another reason why Geb is probably the top support in the game right now. Supports are all about roaming. You go into the lane, you protect your Hunter to the first few levels where they're most vulnerable, and then once they get kind of rolling on their own, you leave them be, you come back to maybe defend them from a few things, but you're constantly running around, you're constantly trying to contest the mid-harpies, you're constantly just trying to have your presence across the map and get as much farm as you can while doing this. Generally, supports will be the lowest level because they're constantly roaming around, but because of rollout, he is just so goddamn fast at getting everywhere. Not to mention his base speed is actually pretty high for a... If you look at this movement, that's pretty high for a tank. I think if you go look... Here's where I embarrass myself and I'm completely wrong. But if I look at Ymir, yeah, see, I embarrass myself and I'm completely wrong. 360. I know there's someone slower. But, like, Geb can get around the map really, really fast, mainly because of that rollout. If I can find him again, we'll go back to him. Athena, the only Guardian that's comparable is Athena with that one where she can dash, and Athena's ultimate where she can get across the entire map quickly. But this is really Geb's key strength, is this rollout. And it has the added benefit of being an initiate tool, as well as a potential way to, like, completely catch someone if they can knock people back with the full rollout. But generally, this is all about getting around the map. His shockwave is just a really, really... It has decent damage, decent wave clear, and it is incredibly effective at setting up teams to be in a really bad position because they get knocked up a little bit. And so when you're knocked up, it's probably the worst CC to be in because it has the added benefit of disorienting you. You have to wait until you fully land and your character gets out of that animation. And even beads doesn't fully bring you out of it instantly. And so any character that has knock-up is at a huge advantage already. Not to mention the range of this thing is really good. But basically, this is what you're going to use to, during the team fights, you're going to be constantly throwing it down to make sure that you are controlling the enemy team. Stone Shield. This is probably, the rollout's good. The Shockwave is good. Being hard as rock is really good. Cataclysm, fantastic. This skill is the best skill in the game. Like, bar none, it has to be like the best skill in the game. Because not only is it, 250 health at max rank, plus 20% of, or 20 per Geb's level, so up to an additional 400. Not only does it last for a fair amount of time, up to 5 seconds, not only is it low mana cost, but it cleanses CC. And this is where good and bad Geb players are separated. A lot of people will be like, oh, this person's taking damage, let me Stone Shield. Where someone like Yannick will be like, oh, this person's getting CC'd? No, he's not. Have fun trying to deal with him now that he has, like, 600 extra health, and he's been CC'd after you try to blow him up with your CC. Good luck. This skill is incredibly good, and it is, if you can just master this skill, even if you're not the best at rotating, even if you're not the best at controlling, if you can master this skill and save your teammates, this is huge. And the main reason that, like, Geb is so good is you can actually then afford to pick, like, a really high damage comp. You can afford to pick the Hebo. You can afford to pick in the solo lane, you can pick up the Ra. You can pick up in your dual, in your like hunter, you can pick like a Rom that's really, really aggressive. You can pick a super assassin jungle like Loki. And even though all those characters have the risk of getting picked, Geb is just so good at protecting everyone that you can get away with it. And you kind of have to do that because Geb's damage is pretty low. His rollout is a really inconsistent form of damage, and sure, it can get to 400, but it's a really inconsistent form of damage. Shockwave, it has the potential to do up to a decent amount of damage, but if they're farther away, which they likely will be, they won't be in like melee range, it's going to do less damage. And Cataclysm, it does percent of the current target health, but you're not going to have any pen, and it deals magical damage, so you're never really going to get the full 35%. Plus, if you use a Cataclysm mid-fight, that's down. It's only 35% of the current target health. So his damage is meh, but his ability to protect teammates is just absolutely nuts. So going into a kind of skill order with keeping all that in mind, start Shockwave. It's going to help you clear out the jungle early on. It's going to give you that level 1. It's not bad. Then I would get Rollout, and then I would get Stone Shield. And then at this point, the priority is going to be Stone Shield over... it's going to be Cataclysm over Stone Shield over Shockwave over Rollout. You don't really need to keep leveling up Rollout. The movement speed that you get is based off of your movement speed, I believe. So you don't actually need to... pretty sure it's based off his movement speed. But you don't gain movement speed per level of this. So you can leave it at level 1 and it'll be pretty effective. Cataclysm you have to level up because you need to make sure you're getting the actual percent target health as best as you can. Stone Shield is super important because the more you level it up, the more quickly it becomes really, really hard to deal with. Even if by like level 9 you're going to have this pretty much maxed, that's 200 to 250 health. At level 9 that's probably a fourth to a fifth of everyone's health. So that's huge. And then Shockwave is just really good. It's a good poke tool, and it's really good there for clear. So continue on. Stone Shield, Cataclysm. Stone Shield, Shockwave, Cataclysm, Stone Shield, Shockwave, Shockwave, Cataclysm, Shockwave, Rollout, Cataclysm, Rollout, Cataclysm. You can, if you're being really aggressive and you're winning the lane really hard, and you know that you can outplay your opponent, you could potentially say, I don't want Stone Shield, and I'd rather wait till I have a little bit more levels, and you can go for the Shockwave and be aggressive. It's not bad. It's just you have to be aware that, like, for example, if I'm with someone like AMC as Geb, I know that we don't really have the best engage and the best kind of fight, and so it'd be almost wasted for me to keep getting shockwave points because he's gonna wave clear already, and I'd rather be able to protect the AMC. But if I have someone like Rom, where I can knock up and then he can immediately turn on his 1 and 2 and start wailing on people, and he's pretty safe on his own, I might decide to get shockwave higher sooner. So there's the kind of variation, but generally these two are the ones you're going to want to level up. You want to level up Cataclysm when you can, and then Rollout's kind of you get 1 point in it, and then you're done. And really all you're using Rollout for is to get across the map really, really, really fast. So going into item builds now for Geb. So let's look at Geb. I'm on Geb, Character Builder. So supports have pretty much the most standard build in the game. They're the only ones where you can say, yeah, their build is absolutely cookie cutter.
Yes.
Yeah, that
Cookie cutter.
cookie cutter. I can speak very, very well. Up until about their 4th item, and that's pretty much, you're gonna start off with Watcher's Gift. You're gonna start off with Hand of the Gods. And then you're gonna start off. I see a lot of people start off with health potions, up to like 3, and then they'll start off with like 2 wards. It is kind of personal preference what you want to do, and the other thing is, if you actually count how much gold this is, 800 plus 300 is 1100, plus 3 wards is 150, so 1250, plus 2 wards is 1350. So you could, in theory, leave really fast, actually level up your rollout and run out, ward everything back and get mana potions. You can do that, but know that those wards, instead, like if you're able to place them later, they'll last more into the early game and reduce your chance of being caught by the enemy jungler if he tries to gank around the 3-minute, 2-minute mark. But this is pretty much what you're gonna want to start. Then you're gonna rush the Midas boots. So these boots, and the reason you rush Midas boots is as a support, you're not getting farm. You're giving the farm up to your hunter. You pretty much are going to be roaming constantly, and because you don't really need too many items. You have such high base health. If you look at actually look at how much he gets per level, he's going to start off with health at 600, and he's gaining 90 per level. All his protections are going up really, really high. You don't need too many items. There's only a few items you really need, and so you need to gain gold somehow, just enough to buy those items, but you're not super gold dependent that you need farm, and so this is where you're going to get your gold from. Plus, because you're going to be throwing out wards, you need some other way to generate gold. Once you have that, you're going to finish up hand 3, because Gold Fury fights can happen as early as like 7 minutes, 8 minutes. And so it could happen even sooner, but generally that's when it happens. You want to get this as fast as possible because you want to be the support that you want to be the best support you can be. You want to be hype. You want to get Wrath of the Gods. You want to be able to kill Gold Fury when it happens. There's nothing worse than being the support that didn't get Wrath of the Gods and then getting it stolen. After that, you're going to rush Sovereignty. Sovereignty is probably one of the most cost-efficient items in the game. It's 2,550 gold for a lot of health, lot of physical protection, and you gain magical and physical protection to all your allies. Sorry, Oak, I just hit you in the face. That's why when I'm making hand, when I'm talking, even when you can't see me, right? Even when you cannot see me, I'm doing this. Like, I'm actively doing this. And Oak decides when he's doing this, that's the best time to jump on the desk. And so I actually feel really bad. I just hit Oak in the face. Moving back into the game, though. It helps your team out, and especially when you're on a team with like squishy mages and squishy hunters, armor is most effective when you're lower. So if you're at 20 armor and you gain 20 armor, that gives you way more protection than if you're at 80 armor and you go to 100. Just because of the way it's calculated. If people in chat are really confused by that, I can go over it. But just kind of trust me for now. I'll go over it later if people really need to know. But this really, really, really helps your squishies out, and it's super huge to team fights. This is a must-buy item. After Sovereignty, I would say rush an active Blink. Blink is probably the only one you're gonna get on Geb because you're gonna be the initiate for the team. And sure, you could use Rollout into Cataclysm, but a lot of times people walk in front of you. One person will walk in front of you, stop you, because the second you hit a god, you stop. You're gonna need some way to initiate with Cataclysm, and Blink is a must. If they have healers on the team, you're gonna have to rely on someone else on your team, like the solo laner, actually going and picking up the Weakening Curse to reduce the healing for you. but you're going to have to get Blink. And then after Blink, you're going to rush straight into Magi's Blessing. And the reason Magi's Blessing is important is if you're on Fire Giant, for example, and Athena runs in and taunts you, that means that they could actually steal the Fire Giant that you're on, if that Athena times it correctly. But if you have Magi's Blessing, that Athena has to actually go in and break your Magi's Blessing before the next taunt can actually work, or someone else has to break it, and that makes it really, really, really hard for anyone to steal it from you, or at least gives you the even chance to make sure that no one can, like, you won't be locked out of ever handing. So this is pretty much every support. Blink is variable depending on it, but this kind of start, where you go Watcher's Gift, Midas Boots, Sovereignty, Magi's Blessing, pick up Wrath of the Gods, you're going to be warding a ton. The only thing that's really different is this active, it depends on who you're playing, is pretty much all supports. If you go look at really any game with any support, this is what it's going to be. Now, here's where you get some variations. There is going to be in the newest patch, and I'm going to use Spirit Robe as a placeholder, so don't actually get Spirit Robe. It's actually not that bad of an item, but don't get Spirit Robe. Geb could potentially make a lot of use out of the magical power and physical protection item and being immune to crits. I think all supports can. The only issue is you might not want to get it, and it'll be hard to tell until it's actually in live. But that new helmet is essentially makes you, after you've been crit once, you can't be crit again for the next 3 seconds, and you gain some bonus power. It's going to be good on all Guardians. I think it's going to be a core 5th and 6th item on all Guardians. Just because of how good this passive is. Imagine that now every support late game. You might not want to get it on Geb though, because it's definitely less effective. So I'm not quite sure why I want to place it, but it's worth noting that it'll be a potential option for you. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if it really works, because it's still going to be valuable to you because of the physical protection it provides. And again, the people that are going to be able to shut you down are going to be the carries, and so the extra protection isn't wasted. But I figured I'd point it out and kind of mention it now. It's debatable whether you're going to get it. I think it's going to be core in all supports. Geb might be the only exception. But moving on, because you have a lot of physical protection already from Sovereignty though, Magi's Blessing gives you a decent amount. You're going to really build your last 2 items to be kind of what you need. If you want to be aggressive, if you want to be really, really aggressive, you can pick up an item like, where is it? You can pick up Voidstone if you have a lot of mages on your team, or you could pick up something like, where is it? Magical Power, Soul Reaver. This means that like when you ult in and you use your 2, you're gonna chunk someone for a lot of extra damage. You get a lot of extra magical power, which is gonna be good for your shockwave and your rollout. I'd probably say if you had to choose, you're probably gonna get Soul Reaver if you really want damage. But the only time you're ever gonna build either one of these 2 is if you're already really far ahead and you're looking to close out the game. If you're just looking for raw defense, Emerald Talisman is really good. It's one of the most cost-efficient items in terms of magic protection in the game. If you're looking for something else, Witchblade is really, really good. It's good at slowing down some hunters. Looking at some of the other ones, Gem of Isolation could be potentially okay, but I wouldn't recommend it. I've seen a few people build it, but I have kind of my reserve against building it. Breastplate of Valor could potentially be very effective on you. Lots of extra physical protection, and the cooldown reduction is going to be really good for sustained fights where you're going to need multiple shields, multiple shockwaves, stuff like that. And if you want another magical protection item, there really isn't too good of one. You can finish off Stone a Guy if you really want to. Voidstone's a potentially good item. It's just there really isn't too good of a magical protection item that you really would justify. I can't justify throwing Spirit Robe out there. You could throw the Bulwark of Hope. It wouldn't be the worst thing ever. It's just a lot of gold to drop. So I'd say if you're looking for a finalized build, by the end game you're probably going to have Midas Boots, Magic Blessing, Sovereignty, Greater Blink, Wrath of the Gods, Emerald Talisman up to a Stone of Gaia, Witchblade, and then one of these 2 items. You're either going to go for the cooldown reduction or you're going to go for the extra potential burst. You could. I don't recommend a few items like Mail Renewal. Mail Renewal I don't think is going to be that good, just because you're kind of... late game, by the time you can afford this, you're not going to be like, oh man, I've now sustained myself after that fight. You're likely going to either be decided or get a deicide, and like you won't have the time to regen it over. In most cases, it's going to be over pretty quick. It's probably going to come down to a fire giant fight that takes about 10 to 20 seconds. And so sure, you could get some from it, but I'd rather see the extra usage of an ability because of Breastplate of Valor, or the extra burst damage you got on someone because of Soul Reaver, rather than something like Mail Renewal Heal. Witchblade is definitely really good. The other one that someone did bring up in chat and is not a bad choice would be Winged Blade. This also gives you some movement speed, a lot of base health, some cooldown reduction, and you're immune to slows potentially. Not the worst choice. I wouldn't say Urchin. Urchin, because by the time you actually get it, it's going to be late game anyway, and you won't have the time to stack it up. Spirit Robe does have its place. I guess I should address this. The only reason I don't say Spirit Robe is just because I don't think it provides enough stats for the cost. Like, if you look at this, it's 55 magical protection, 125 health, and sure, you get the reduced 15% mitigation for 3 seconds when I hit with a hard crowd control ability, but Emerald Talisman is already giving me 50 magical protection, 100 health for like 1,000 less gold. So I'm only getting 25 extra health, the 5% magical protection, and 15% mitigation for another almost 1,000 gold. And if I decide to spend the money to actually get Stone of Gaia, I'm still spending less for 70 magical protection, and I'm going to be regenning extra health over the course of like a fight. I think that would be more beneficial than Spirit Robe. It's definitely an item that I think gets flack for no reason. But I think Emerald Talisman, just overall for cost efficiency's sake, is better. And so this is basically where I'm going to be calling the show. I don't have enough experience to like really kind of show you a Geb game. I haven't played him too much in rank, so I don't have a game that I can pull up. But I will say, if you want to go watch someone absolutely dominate as Geb, look up Ionic. Ionic is probably his performance at the NA LAN using Geb was flawless. He did so many good things. He shielded people at the right times. He engaged beautifully. He is all around the map. And he's been using Geb pretty much exclusively in the SPL. If he can get it, like he played like a Sobek game, but like there's so many games of him just doing really well with Geb. And so if you really want to learn it, you can look up, like, for example, I'll show you how to kind of get to his game, so you can look at it. Let's see, in game. You can look up player name Ionic, and he's gonna be the person I'm spotlighting here. Recent matches. Let's look for like a Geb win. You can just click on this League Conquest. Even where he loses, it's also beneficial. You don't want to only look at wins. Losses are worth looking at too, to see what really happened and see if you can identify maybe a mistake he made, so you can try and avoid it yourself. But look at any game, pull it up. You can do this with any support if you have a more favorite support, and you can hit view replay. I believe all ranked games past a certain point are all viewable, so I believe you can view it, like any one of these games, as long as it's a League Conquest. And so yeah, you see I'm in the game, and so you'll be able to watch it. No matter, you'll be able to watch it from beginning to end, and that's probably the best way you're gonna learn Geb. I don't have the expertise of playing him in ranked. I can't really say. I can give you general strategy, what the skills are used for, what you should be trying to do. You should be rotating to mid harpies. Use your one to rotate. Use your shield as a really defensive measure to give protections and to cleanse CC off. You want to be constantly trying to disrupt the team fight with your 2. You want to blink engage with the ultimate. You want to make sure when you do blink engage, though, that your team is close enough to follow up. There's nothing worse than being the support that blinks and ults, and then they're all out of the CC by the time anyone gets there. You want to be able to collapse on it, so be aware of that too. But that's really general stuff. You want the kind of like specific minor movements that someone who plays nothing but Geb, Ionic is the person you want to watch. But yeah, that is it for me. I'm going to go to another Be Right Back screen. But if you guys have questions on anything, so I'm going to open it up to questions about anything. You have a specific question about a god, general concept, even something like on a siege or assault map. I don't mind going over those too, because I play those a lot. So there's actually some strategy in those modes as well. Not as much as Conquest, but there is some. But I'm going to take a quick break here. I'll be right back, and I will see you guys then. Come up with questions.